Today, we are breaking down the biggest winners and losers from college football week number 6. Let's get right into this. I do this series every single week, along with it for NFL rookies. So if you guys like that, along with mock drafts, feel free to join the show. Let's start out with our superstars of the week. And if you guys are a subscriber on Patreon, you're going to get all of this and other players that just maybe didn't make the cut, but still needed to be mentioned as a winner or a loser. Feel free to mention them as well. But the number one, not in any particular order, superstar of the week, Wesley Williams, edge rusher out of Duke. He has been on this episode or on this series a couple of times now because he is actually doing a fantastic job alongside his partner in crime, Vincent Anthony. But Wesley ended up having the dominant performance this week, a 75 defensive grade, 7 pressures, and 6 stops. Targeted 1 time, 1 reception, -1 yards as well. Fantastic performance. Obviously, he's been a huge asset for Duke every single week. Just kind of the lesser known player there, but definitely somebody who needs to be added to a watch list. And you can see the guy's built very well, 6'3", 265, like definitely somebody that will pop out and like maybe can be competing with Akeem Mesidor for a little bit of that, early day 3 territory. Akeem, the only reason for him is because he's a little bit older, shorter arms. But Wesley is making a strong case for himself, maybe even late day 2. Keon Saab, king defensive back out of Alabama. He is finally making a splash play. He was somebody I really, really liked coming into last year. Ended up having a little bit of a down year, but had a fantastic performance. Number 2 grade on his entire team this past week with an 87 defensive grade. Alongside that, he had a defensive pressure, and then he ended up having 3 targets sent his way, allowing a goose egg, 0 catches, 4 an interception, and a pass breakup. So good to see. I mean, this is somebody that I was like consistently mocking to the Bears in round 2 of last year before he ended up saying, I'm returning to school. And I think it was a smart decision. It's a pretty open safety class after the top 2. You have competition with Zaki Wheatley, but at the same time, and then Kamari Ramsey as well. But it's just a good group of guys to where, he's actually able to come out as with positive momentum rather than, trying to live a little bit in the past. But I love his range. I love what he's been able to do. And again, had some stumbles, but putting everything together and seeing that year-over-year growth is exactly what I look for. Great job there. Leonard Moore back on the series again with the superstars. This guy has been phenomenal. I think he might be the best defensive player in college that does not get love because this guy is ridiculous. I mean, he's kind of the Ruben Bain of defensive backs, of cornerbacks specifically. He is literally not draft eligible. He's a true sophomore. Dude's absolutely killing it, though. 86 defensive grade, a 90 coverage grade, a defensive stop, a forced fumble, targeted 6 times, allowing 3 completions for 23 yards and 2 interceptions. This dude knows how to play the game of football. There's a reason why every time I see a receiver that has a matchup versus Notre Dame, I make sure to watch that, because whether they're dicing up Christian Gray or not doesn't really mean that much to me. But if I end up seeing them get some reps against Leonard Moore, that's where I really like to put my focus and, weigh my grading specifically, because Leonard Moore is somebody who I think is going to be an absolute dynamite piece as a true top 5 corner in the NFL. Even when he ends up being in his rookie contract. This guy is amazing. Then we got our next player here, Deshaun Singleton, defensive back out of Nebraska, ended up committing to, or at least accepting, a Shrine invite last year, then ended up saying, I'm returning. So ended up making a solid decision, I guess. 63 defensive grade, 4 defensive stops, targeted 6 times, allowing only 1 completion for 7 yards, and had a pair of interceptions. Great week there for Deshaun Singleton. So again, we're talking about a pretty solid safety class in terms of contributors at the very minimum, and it's good to see that. You need to have these guys, especially with the way that some of these NFL teams are running. They're pretty light in terms of their safety cores. We need some infusion of youth that also has some talent there. David Bailey, I mean, is it much of a surprise to see him on this list? No, but David Bailey has been fantastic there for Texas Tech. This past week, he ended up having a 92 defensive grade, 11 pressures, 3 defensive stops, and a forced fumble. This guy has been tearing it up. Romello Height also had a really solid game, but not necessarily worth putting on this list. He ended up having some good plays there, but David Bailey was the star this week, and they kind of just continue tossing the ball back and forth, so to speak, with each other in terms of who's going to make a superstar of the week. But regardless, David Bailey, fantastic performance. And then you have Ruben Bain, edge rusher out. Oh, spoiled it. Ruben Bain, edge rusher out of Miami. And I'll just toss it the next guy, Akeem Mesidor. So we don't get our feathers too ruffled here. Both of them had fantastic performances this past week. 89 defensive grade and 11 pressures and a stop for Bain, while Akeem Mesidor, 74 defensive grade with 8 pressures and 5 stops. So again, talk about yin and yang here. Both these guys have been ridiculous. And I mean ridiculous. So I'm a huge fan of what they're bringing to the table, like in terms of just consistent week-over-week production. Akeem Mesidor, if I'm not mistaken, he is either number 1 or number 2 in the entire country for true pass rush win rate as well. These guys have been killing it. So let's talk about Nico Iamaleava, though. I mean, I was not very high on him coming into the year. And to be fair, I think he's finally gotten into a little bit more of a system that's comfortable for him with this new play caller. God bless. Josh Heupel does not necessarily train his quarterbacks for the NFL. And I feel very happy with my initial evaluation. I think that it's been pretty spot on. So really happy to see Nico now with a far more translatable system performing at a much higher level. He had all the physical talent there, and then it's finally starting to click for him. I'm hoping it continues. Fingers crossed, hoping it continues. You got to put this out there as well. Drew Aller had a very solid game. Like, we can shit all we want on Penn State for losing this, but the Penn State defense was really what let them down. But regardless, it wasn't really an individual performance that ended up being like the bad spot. It was the whole defense that just slightly underperformed. And then with a new system, with Nico finally being in stride, ended up having a good game here. 17 completions on 24 throws, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 2 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play. But here's the killer here. 12 carries, 150 yards, 3 touchdowns with 4 missed tackles forced. So on the ground, this guy ended up making a huge difference. And yes, you're not really looking for a quarterback to be a massive ground threat over being an air threat. But it is good to see that, especially in big moments versus a very solid team, he was able to make a lot of difference there. So we'll see what happens with Nico. I do still want him to sit and develop if he does come out. I don't think he should. He is draft eligible, but I'm still going to put that projection NA because I do think that, unless this continues, we're going to have to believe that he's going to end up staying in college. And, with the NIL money as it is, it does seem like guys who have slow starts to the year as well are going to be a little bit more incentivized unless they are hitting the gradual curve and ends up being more of an exponential curve. Chris Bell, wide receiver 2 for me, ended up having a baller week for the Louisville Cardinals. So wide receiver 2 ended up having 14 targets this past week, 12 receptions, 170 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And I'll just say this. I'm going to see if I don't think I ended up putting him in this, but I was very, very close to putting Miller Moss as a loser of the week. So I just want you guys to understand this context. Miller did not throw like 400 yards, 10 touchdowns, and have 0 turnover-worthy plays. He had 1 big-time throw and 5 turnover-worthy plays. I'm just going to put it out there. Chris Bell was not getting absolute snipes right into his hands. This was a very big on Chris Bell performance. And you guys know me, all love for my boy Miller Moss, but Chris Bell is dynamic, and he's showing that he's able to elevate an offense even when the quarterback is struggling. A team that's definitely picking in the early second should be looking at this guy as a potential huge winner on their squad. Let's talk about the rest of the stars of the week, though. This is only going to be one group rather than 2 special groups here. We got TJ Parker, edge rusher out of Clemson. Good to see him have a great week. 90 defensive grades, 6 pressures, and 3 defensive stops. Also targeted 1 time, not having a completion on that play. So really solid performance overall by TJ Parker. Easily could have been. I just don't want to oversaturate the superstars of the week with edge rushers. But Kyle Lewis, next player, my top linebacker, by the way. Well, no, it's not. Arvell Reese now is. But before Arvell Reese ended up being Arvell Reese, Kyle Lewis was, my guy coming into the year. 92 defensive grade, 92 coverage grade as well. Ended up having a pressure, 2 defensive stops, a forced fumble, targeted 6 times for 4 receptions, 31 yards, and a pass breakup. This dude's a Swiss Army knife. He's just a little bit on the small side. So a smart defensive mind is going to be able to make this guy look like an absolute superstar because That's what he is, unless you don't use him properly. Then we have Mason Heinzschel. I think I might have said that correctly. Probably not. Girl I'm talking to is German, so she ends up like trying to correct me on pronunciation, and I'm absolute crap at it. But I try my best. Quarterback out of Pittsburgh, first game comes in, dominates, 41 throws, 30 completions, 323 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions with 3 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play, 8 carries, 45 yards, and 3 missed tackles forced. Easily could have been a superstar of the week, but at the same time, again, don't want to like oversaturate that field. This is still an award show essentially for how guys are doing week by week. Really, really damn good performance for his first game. And, I never was a guy for Eli Holstein. That's just a big thing for me. I ended up seeing him in person last year at SMU, and I thought he was crap. Mason ended up coming in, and after Eli's struggles, kind of exposed him. Just going to put that out there. I'm not a quarterback guru. I try my best. I'll always do that. So I'm not going to invalidate my opinion, but at the same time, it's like I'm not going to use my own words as gospel because I'm always trying to reevaluate. When everybody else loved Eli Holstein, I had some doubts, but I do feel a little bit more vindicated because of that. Jacob Redding, defensive back out of Baylor, ended up having a fantastic game there. He ended up, I think, being the reason they won, had a pick 6, if I'm not mistaken. 91 defensive grade, a 90 coverage grade, 3 defensive stops, targeted 3 times, allowing 1 completion for 21 yards, and had an interception. A great post-game interview as well, obviously. Like, I'm a man of God myself, so seeing guys, even like Emeka Egbuka, like all these guys are being able to like preach and stuff. I love seeing that because, that's like intrinsic motivation. It's why they end up doing all their best and like they study hard, they play their asses off. And, it's good to see. It's good to see that guys are, putting their, energy and their faith in the right spot because Jacob Redding seems like a high quality dude. He's like, I didn't even think that I'd ever be here. And, I'm ending up making like this game winning play. So it's just so good to see that Jacob Redding, fantastic play there this past week. We'll see if he ends up making it a little more consistent, but still really solid player. Speaking of one, Michael Trigg, tight end out of Baylor. I usually don't put on player. Like he was one that I debated whether I would like fully put him on here but it's like, he's a tight end. You got to give them a little bit more credit because there's players who had more yardage, more touchdowns, but the splash plays from Michael Trigg this past week have been phenomenal. And again, you think about it in terms of the tight end lens, 13 targets, 8 receptions for 155 yards. This dude, it pissed me off that he didn't do this versus SMU because I would have loved to have seen him in person do that. But, ended up showing out, having, of course, back-to-back fantastic catches. And on that one drive that ended up circulating on X, dominating, showing that he's a really good receiving threat. I do think people are becoming hyperbolic in terms of, people get excited, and I don't want to like piss on anybody's bonfire, or like, piss in their Wheaties? Is that like the correct term? But, I do think that people are so knee-jerk reactive, so like impulsive that the moment somebody does something great, they're like instantly top 50. Oh my God, they're a first round pick. And it's like, guys, you're killing what they're doing by trying to overblow it. It's like, oh my God, like Michael Trigg did something fantastic. That's amazing. Let's not talk about the draft stock as soon as it happens. There's so much more football and so much more aspects to football that matter for Michael Trigg, but still a fantastic player. For me, it was so funny, like 2 years or 3 years ago before he, right as he transferred to Ole Miss, I put him in a way too early first round mock draft. So, I guess cool, but I would say that I was more, as the name suggests, a Hail Mary more than anything. But next pick, Karen Prunty, cornerback out of Wake Forest. So I love defensive backs from Wake Forest. That's just a thing for me. 74 defensive grade, 8 pressure, 2 defensive stops, targeted 5 times for 2 receptions, 9 yards allowed, and 2 pass breakups. A very solid performance right there. Again, a little bit different than Michael Trigg, who was like absolutely dominant versus a really good performance. Ty Simpson, though, had to toss him in here. This dude's been on a meteoric rise, like stumbled week 1, but he's just gotten better and better and better. 31 throws, 23 completions, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 4 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play, 5 carries, 21 yards, and 2 missed tackles forced. A really solid game there versus Vanderbilt where, off the bat, Diego Pavia, we'll talk about him. doing some stupid stuff and just trying to put some, some vibes out there that, the game was already kind of won before it started. And Ty Simpson goes out there and shows what Jalen Milroe couldn't last year. But next we have Donovan Hinnish, defensive interior out of Notre Dame. And this is also why I do this series. You'll talk about guys like Jacob Redding, Donovan Hinnish, like guys that I don't necessarily have the opportunity to speak about in terms of the mock draft realm, because there's just different tiers to where you're talking about really quality players. And these guys usually go at the end of day 3, UDFA. Like, they still make a difference, but I'm not doing a 7-round mock every week. Those things are unbelievably draining. You ask anybody who's done a 7, it's just absolutely horrible. But it allows us to discuss the more important side of roster building that we don't discuss. And so it's really cool. But regardless, Donovan Hinnish, on 21 pass rushing reps, he had a 75 defensive grade with 7 pressures. That is ridiculous. 7 pressures alone will get you on this list, but only 21 reps rushing the passer. That is phenomenal. I think he's in the 270s, though. So kind of talking about a Santana Hopper situation. Shout out to my guy, Hank. I don't think he watches this series, or at least he's not going to be watching that portion. But, if Hank is watching, I know he'll reach out. Then Jacoby Thomas, defensive back out of Miami. This past week, he had a 91 defensive grade, 92 coverage grade, 2 pressures, and 3 defensive stops. Had a forced fumble, targeted 8 times for 3 receptions, 31 yards, and a touchdown. The reason he wasn't on a superstar of the list is for that reason. But had an interception and 2 pass breakups on top of that. I couldn't ignore it. Usually when players allow touchdowns, I tried to give credit to guys who didn't have the slip-ups. You'll see, I'll give credit to Emeka Buka a couple weeks ago or maybe last week, but he ended up having a drop in a great week. So it's I won't put you in the superstar category. I'll put you in the star category. There's just certain things. If you have a slip-up, I'm going to put the guys who have almost a fully polished game or a fully perfect game over somebody who had a little slip up, but still give them the credit they deserve. And that's exactly what I did with Jacoby. Then last but not least, Alligator Arms, Cassius Howell. Love him to death. Had another 3-sack performance, 6 pressures, and 3 stops. Cassius Howell, once again, having a big performance. But let's go to the duds of the week. I do need to reverse this because I always start off on such a high note and then have to end on crapping on players. But we have the most, I think, possibly the most duds of the week. So starting out, Tomas Remak. First off, this is honestly more on the Virginia Tech coaching staff, but this is on me as well. I fell in love with him at West Virginia. I think he followed his coach to Virginia Tech. I remember seeing some articles about it, but they're using this guy in every single position. And finally, he starts being used back at guard where he was, and he's having worse games. I don't fully understand the context of that. Obviously, playing a guard is not necessarily solely dependent on how he plays. I know there's a lot of factors in there, but he has not been good at all. And they've used him at right tackle for a couple games, left tackle a couple games, left guard. You're killing this guy's opportunity to grow in comfortability and skill. And it just pisses me off. It's to the point where I'm literally saying he's a UDFA. I had him as a top 10 to 15 guy on my board. And I think this guy is not going to get drafted. I mean, it's a whiff on me. But more importantly, and most importantly, Virginia Tech pissed it on its own talent because they can't have proper roster management. I'm going to call them out for it. They've done a horrible job. They really have. They've done a horrible job. And they deserve as much criticism as possible. I mean, how the hell do you have a talent that is this good, and especially if you followed his coach, one that is that good, and you just end up not allowing him to build consistency, comfortability, and just get polished to where you don't have to worry about a position anymore? There's coaches who are arrogant and coaches who are smart. There's not really much in between. And I'm really starting to believe that Virginia Tech, with the way that you're saying, oh, if we have a hole here, we're just going to plug probably our best offensive lineman there. That's the dumbest thing you can do. Consistency matters the most on the offensive line. It's not like a defensive player where, oh, we have some splash, we want to use them all over. Sorry, offensive linemen are not Swiss Army knives. They're not. They're based on consistency, form, and timing. You need to be able to have comfortability, especially with a new quarterback, new offensive lineman. You cannot screw with a dude's head like that. It just doesn't work. So, this is another reason why I do this series, because not that many people are going to see me rant like that. But genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, I think they're absolutely screwing Tomas over. I think they're doing a shitty job because you're ruining a talent that genuinely has first round potential. based on the physicality, the mobility, like just all the skill that Tomas has. When you end up screwing any chance of him developing and getting comfortable, all you're doing is hurting your own team and hurting your own players. And you're seeing the result of it. I mean, Virginia Tech has been absolutely atrocious in terms of their overall production. So, very, 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 very ashamed of seeing like how badly that's been handled. But Diego Pavia, speaking of someone who should have some shame, practicing a damn victory formation at the start of a game, brother, please, like, come on now. Like, I thought it's funny as fuck. I mean, you see, it's like, okay, you better win the game. But then when you lose and then lose 30-14, brother, let's add on top of that. He had 21 completions on 35 throws. Oh, by the way, I didn't even talk about this for Tomas Remak. 3 pressures and a 21 pass blocking grade. So, I mean, just icing on the cake. It was a bad performance by him, but I do think it's heavily on Virginia Tech staff. But for Diego Pavia, 35 throws, 21 completions, 202 yards, touchdown, interception, 1 big-time throw, 3 turnover-worthy plays, 12 carries, 68 yards, and a fumble. If you're going to do that shit, at least have the same amount of big-time throws and turnover-worthy plays, brother. You know, like, at least go down swinging. 202 yards, having the interception as well, having 3 turnover-worthy plays, like, it's an all-time embarrassing moment for somebody that obviously we don't really believe in as an NFL quarterback, but it kind of just seals the deal. It's like, all right, this is getting kind of gimmicky. And I'm pretty sure he's also like a much older prospect. So, I mean, it kind of, I guess, makes sense since Manziel is there that he would end up being on his more immature version of himself. Then we got Aiden Childs. Gosh, dude, this guy's definitely returning to school. He was also like 19 to start out the year, so it happens. But 23 throws, and he ended up being hurt. He got just demolished earlier in the game, so he ended up coming back, if I'm not mistaken. So at least he's like warrior spirit there. But the on-field production was ass. 23 throws, 9 completions, 85 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 0 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays. Did well on the ground, 10 carries, 63 yards, and 2 touchdowns with 4 missed tackles forced. But once again, we want quarterbacks who can throw the ball. This is not fantasy football. Hate to say it. It's always good to be able to run. It provides that floor of effectiveness. But to be able to start in the NFL, you need to be able to throw consistently. And Lamar Jackson is the exception, not the rule. He has ended up polishing his game to such an elite level that it's not translatable to other prospects. So, it definitely is something where it's like Aiden was my QB6 coming to the year. Definitely looks like he's taken some steps back in terms of his progression, but the high level play is still absolutely there. Just needs to work a lot more on the consistency and polish that he needs definitely another year for. Then let's talk about the rest of the stock down guys. And once again, I ended up giving an honorable or a dishonorable mention to Miller Moss. But Frederick Williams, left tackle out of Cal, he's somebody who's been mentioned on this show before. So I wanted to put him in here because this past week he had a 53 pass blocking grade with 6 pressures allowed. For somebody who's been on the stars of the week, I think it's fair to criticize him of when he doesn't do well. J.Q. Hardaway, cornerback out of Kentucky, 52 defensive grade, 2 defensive stops. But here's the big issue for me. In coverage, he's been super hot and cold. He'll have a week where he's pretty much shut down, has an interception. And y'all know J.Q. Hardaway was my guy coming into the year, had him about like a top 110 player. But 6 of 6 for 72. Just not going to work in the NFL if you're allowing 72 yards and, pretty much allowing a perfect scorecard in terms of what you're very similar to how I'm saying quarterbacks, nice that you can run, but can you please throw? Defensive backs, cool. You get a couple defensive stops. You're showing some effectiveness versus the run, or at least an open field tackling. But can you cover, please? That's what I'm saying. Come on, man. And Dom Orange, I know he's been banged up. So, take it with an asterisk, take it with a grain of salt. 56 defensive grade, though. Only 1 pressure on 25 reps, and he missed both of his tackles. I am very critical of PFF for how much they absolutely rail these dudes. For missing tackles. A dude will have 1 missed tackle, and it'll just be tanking his grade. I'm like, this guy ended up having 30 pressures and 6 interceptions. And how does he have a 42 grade? Because he missed a tackle. I'm like, are you kidding me? So it's why you can't just trust the defensive grades. You can't just look. in like numerical order. It's why I like to give context as well to those grades. It allows it to be much more simplified, of course, in the analysis. But yeah, just I mean, if you miss both of your key tackles, like you deserve some shit. So, especially for Dom Orange, who's in the consideration for that early day 2, late day 1 territory, that is unacceptable. But Eli Stowers is next. Another guy who almost got on the duds of the week, targeted 7 times with 3 receptions for 22 yards, had 2 drops as well. For somebody who is an older tight end who's looked at pretty much exclusively as a receiving tight end, probably going to be in the slot only, you need to be able to catch the ball. I got mad at Eli Raridan, who's primary blocking tight end, who has ended up evolving into the tight end I was hoping he would this year. Even he, when he has drops, I'm going to get on his ass. But for a tight end that is undersized and exclusively a receiving weapon, that's unacceptable, especially in a loss that your quarterback was taking knees before the game. Arch Manning, I mean, he still makes some good throws, but the dude crumbled when it got to the high pressure territory. 30 throws, 16 completions, 263 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 2 big time throws, 4 turnover worthy plays. The only reason he wasn't part of the worst of the worst is 9 carries for 74 yards. Like, he did help out in the ground game a lot. But I will say this, well, actually, by the way, just talking about the ground game, I actually didn't include him, which I probably should have. But, the running back, Quintravian Wisner, also had a abysmal game. Abysmal game. Like 8 carries, 11 yards on the ground. It was pathetic. But also, I believe, a fumble. But all that being said, I'm not sure if Arch ended up having that 4th turnover-worthy play as the play that was nearly intercepted, but ended up being pretty much called back anyways. So it might have been 5, but I also thought he fumbled. Regardless, I mean, it's just a whole mess. Like, when pressure got turned high, this guy ended up really making some bad throws. The velocity just doesn't really seem to be there on these interceptions. They float, and it's like he 100% needs to stay, but some people are even trying to say he shouldn't be starting. I'm not educated enough on the backup situation, but if the talent is there, stop going for the name brand. Well, I mean, I guess at this point you're screwed. So I guess you could just try to work it out with Arch because you're not going to get to the playoff at this point. But it's a weird situation. And it does feel like Arch Manning is that nepotism. Like, nepotism really got there. And people are, of course, bringing up the high school footage saying, of course, this guy's a 5-star when everybody else is like so ass around him. But regardless, talking about some more guys, Jack Endries, love him to death. But 4 targets, 2 receptions, 2 yards in a game that, I don't think Florida is like creme de la creme for linebackers at the moment. It's something he should have ended up being more productive on. Trevor Gooseby, 63 pass blocking grade, 5 pressures allowed. Florida feasted. And the right tackle was 10 times worse. I think he allowed 9 pressures, but yeah, not pretty there for Gooseby. I mean, definitely something that people are going to be a little bit concerned about. I do not like Gooseby's feet. The more I watch him, the more I start feeling more and more comfortable with my analysis versus the initial gut reaction of people at the start of the year. But regardless, let's talk about Dane Key. Even though it's not like the worst stat line in history, it's just 0 receptions on 2 targets. For somebody who I was hoping to be more of that true number 1 there, that's not what you are hoping for. Darius Taylor, I didn't include Wisner because Darius Taylor was even worse. This past week versus Ohio State, 8 carries, 12 yards, and a missed tackle force, did not even get a reception. So really bad for some people's RB2. Of course, I don't even remember where Darius was on mine, but yeah, just not pretty. Not pretty at all. Obviously, they got they got their ass whooped, just to be blunt. And then Earl Little Jr., someone who I was really excited to see this year, and then 31 defensive grade, a defensive stop, targeted twice, 2 receptions, 47 yards, and a touchdown. He's balled out in particular moments, but you just got to be equal with your criticism as much as your praise. He definitely struggled this past week. I'm hoping he ends up bouncing back. And so that's going to be the video. Thank you again for watching, showing the love you always do. I'll see you later. Peace.